Well, first of all, you're wondering why I'm in my underwear, right? Well, we'll get to that later in this video. Right now we have to talk about art. Specifically about my body of work that's coming up, Goddess. It's a trilogy. Three large paintings is unique of me. A lot of people haven't seen big stuff by me. But when I decided to do something big, I wanted to do something impactful. I wanted to resort to my past experiencing learning about art, about aesthetics, and I went back to the rudimentary ideas of my own philosophy on spirituality and beauty. I'm an atheist, and I'm not too comfortable sometimes using spirituality because then that paradox of like, well, if you're an atheist, you can't believe in any sort of supernatural aspect, and you're right. I don't believe in aliens. Um, I'm more of a spiritual person when it comes to my imagination. I believe artists are their own supernatural entity, their own god, because they can imagine and create things that are out of this realm. I'm kind of feeding my ego there. um, so, the thing that I want to do is something beautiful too, and when it comes to beauty, the philosophy behind it can be skewed because there's this sense of subjectiveness when we talk about beauty, especially in arts and all the different mediums that there are. However, what I wanted to go back to how I in philosophy have learned that anything aesthetically pleasing and beautiful imitates nature. So I used elements of nature, flowers, mammals, birds, plants, and all sorts of things, and lay them out in a specific way. Specifically, in my sort of neo-paganism, not a Wiccan, nope. I wanted to underline the fact that nature is beautiful, and nature for artists provides the medium to which I, for instance, added order to it. I redesigned, for instance, these are redesigned lilies, give it that more supernatural aspect. Well, why nature? Well, I'm framing nature as this omnipotent being, basically a god, because to me nature has its way of being maternal as well as all-powerful without lending itself to our Judeo-Christian God that is not mine, but general public, or at least the majority of people in this country. How nature doesn't judge. There are awful things that nature itself is responsible for, but at the end of the day, because nature to me is immortal, we're never going to dive too far to non-existence. There's always going to be life. Mind you, our existence might be destroyed, but nature will always fend for life. So, I'm going into the spiritual realm. Why? Well, I wanted to do something that was smart, and I wanted to do something that was innovative. As a person who is brown, Mexican, gay, I wanted to rewrite the story that I grew up with, which is I grew up Catholic, and I hated it ever since I was a kid. It was a story of misery and violence and just these power plays, and I wanted to try to do something where I had the least amount of reference to the stories that I was taught, and something where if there was paradise, if there was a God, this is what we would have to worship. Alright, cool? Are we ready? Are you ready? Alright, I'm ready. I think I got this. I think I'm going to be pretty good. Alright, the principle behind this painting, which is Goddess number 2, is kind of an exploration of the ecosystem that surrounds us. This is a continuous turning circle, like an Ouroboros, and we'll talk about snakes later. But it's self-sustaining, not jeopardizing in itself. But what we have here is this individual. I never really give guys a full human aspect or embodiment. I kind of chop her up or scale her out of the picture just to not only lend that she's bigger than us, but also she's not necessarily of flesh and blood. So Goddess is holding out her own beating heart that from its veins protrudes water, and the water is what sustains life. You know, this medium for life. So we have fish, we have dragonflies, bats, and then we have these women placed strategically. Not yeah, I tend to space things out and at certain degrees where they're all interacting with each other, but in a sustainable way. This is a hunting scene, but I didn't want to make it an emphasis on the bloodiness of hunting, rather than its place within a self-sustaining ecosystem. In the realm of spirituality, you know, we all play a role. Here, the fairies and the bats are hunting aside. They're all gonna get their fair share. No one's gonna go hungry. You know, this is paradise. This is nature as most sustainable. What I wanted to do with this was, when I painted this, yes, I painted it with the heart being at the center and being what grabs you. But when I painted this, and how I view it when I see it, is from top to bottom. Meaning, imagine that the bottom stuff is closest to you, and as you progress upwards, it goes farther. And with that landscape or set, you view the fish and the bats, mostly the black bats, coming at you, flying towards you. I always try in my art, whether I'm doing sort of pop art, post-contemporary, surreal, illustrative, to have animation. We're, as artists, competing with a lot of different mediums. I mean, when you go to the Phoenix Art Museum, it's not just paintings anymore. There's installations, rooms, fabric just laid out in effort to give it an experience outside of the visual one. So I can't do without my script, and I'm a little short on time, so it's not gonna look as great, but I'm still in my underwear, so you're good. So this is Guys Number 1. This is actually the first painting which I started with. This one kind of set the frame of what I was gonna do. Why? Let me look at my paper so I can tell you. Dude, I'm reading through it. So I was going back to, this is probably where I can, this painting is where I can say I've clearly set the message that this is totally something different from what you read in theology, especially in Judeo-Christian. I set goddess, you know, even though you can see her face and her torso, there's still an identifying aspect about her. You really know who she is. You can't see her eyes. Her body is a little dismembered. It's disjointed. But yeah. So, why do I resent the patriarchy so much? I guess it's not about resenting the patriarchy, but it's things like misogyny, homophobia, genocide, and infanticide that really gets to me, and it makes me wanna do something about it, but I'm just an artist and I really can't talk much or do much in anything outside of this. I don't do anything other than paint well. Yeah, to me, especially how I was taught Christianity in being Catholic, I was always afraid of this giant entity called God that could just snoop on you. He was miserable, vengeful, all these things, and when I had the intellect to think of the possibility of if there is a God or whatnot and what paradise would be, I totally felt that the entity for which we ascribe the title of our creator would be female and would be nurturing and motherly and compassionate and non-judgmental and very unconditional in her love, because it's through her that all possibilities exist. And I feel if I were to get away personally from the Judeo-Christian God, I could understand free will better and why certain things happen. Especially my life has been rough and there's a lot of questions I've had to deal with and a lot of things that I felt unfair about. So this is my paper. I know, boo-hoo. Hey, I don't have many subscribers, so it's not like I'm gonna win an award for this. This one you see bees, hummingbirds, and snake. And here, this is probably the only one where you're gonna see conflict. Um, the most fun part to paint for me was the snake, and you're gonna see here that you have this like fairy entity attacking it. Um, I wanted to give that clear reference of killing the idea of uh, the Genesis story, basically giving her the hint of Eve. You can even see she has gray hairs compared to the other ones, and she's basically exacted her revenge and killed the snake. I personally find the idea of Eve being responsible for her downfall very unfair to women, because I think that whole story kind of sets the power dynamic in a way where men are dominant over women, and women are to be pious and kind of be shameful, in their femininity and in their physical attributes, their sensuality and whatnot. So yeah, so enough about that. Um, so although that might be the case for this, I didn't want to objectively say that that's what it is, because it's not. Here, in a lot of other cultures, there's the idea of snakes being protectors of knowledge and temples. It's gonna be the third and final painting, and although there isn't a clear order of these, I do always hint a sense of narrative in my paintings. This one specifically kind of ties it all together. This is more of a finale, in the sense of, like, although we'd like to think of a paradise and a creator that is, all loving, and paradise being all peaceful and inclusive, that's a dream that unfortunately we have to put to rest, because we live in a society where the male patriarchy is at the head of power, and to them, business as usual is war and violence and injustice, only because the person at the helm of power is greater than law. In the scenario here, with Goddess Balda laying on her side, resting almost, but yet I wanted to be more like she has this passing away, which is kind of contradicting the sense of immortality that I wanted to give this art. And the fairies in these paintings are are actually having this procession, like a funeral. They're playing for her, and when I started this and painting the notes, it's actually, the notes are Dido's Lament. There's this music sheet for that, and if you don't know who Dido is, or the story, I think it's Greek for sure. I don't know if it's mythology or historical account that got turned into. It's inspired a lot of paintings and poetries. One of my favorite Mexican poets, she has this beautiful poem. I'll share it if you guys ask me. But here you see all these creatures, butterflies, the monkeys, the jaguar, the beautiful jaguar, kind of approaching Goddess, trying to wake her up from her slumber, and the wind blowing in the opposite direction of their motion, kind of opposing that, removing the petals. And here, the one thing I didn't mention about the other painting, where the flowers are supposed to emulate tulips, but a little more supernatural. Here you have the notion of cherry blossoms, but they're a lot more marshmallowy. I'm short on funds, and I need an investor, or investors. Art isn't cheap. Heck, making this was not cheap. There was cellophane, paint, there was wrapping paper, tool that I used, all purchased by me, and no one helped. Well, I did have help, but they weren't big bucks help. And yeah, I'm looking for a sugar daddy. Hey, I might not be a twink, but this gut tells you I can drink because I have an iron liver, and I'm pretty smart. I can hold a conversation, and I'm an artist, so I'm a good company to take to fancy parties.